Welcome everyone to Give God 90 Radio on Demand. And thank you so very much for listening to this whenever you are listening. You are in control of when you listen to this. That's what makes it so great. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90. It is such a pleasure to have you tune in and give a listen to the things I'm saying. You can listen to this if you have the Give God 90 app, which is absolutely free for your Apple or Android device. And, you can download it. If you're traveling, you can listen to it. If you just need a good cure for insomnia, you can listen to it as well. If you're having trouble sleeping, plug it in. I have people tell me all the time that when I'm speaking, they just fall right to sleep. And, yeah, at least I'm good for something, right? Okay. We just finished the last time on a Monday with the Ten Commandments. And, I was thinking about what do I do next? And that is why this segment is called, and it might actually last a little bit, we have the Ten Commandments, now what? It's interesting that what we get with the Ten Commandments, we have this list of instructions. The Almighty tells Moses, okay, you gather the people, you have them get ready, and I'm going to come visit them. So Moses instructs the people how to get ready, and they're doing their things to get ready. And for 3 days, they washed, they cleaned up, they got things spick and span spotless. But I don't think, from the narrative we have, that they were quite expecting what they got. When the Almighty makes an entrance, He makes an entrance. And He does so with thunder and lightning and this thick black cloud, the results of which, by the way, can still be seen on the real Mount Sinai. And if you haven't, okay, I'm going to go down this trail just a little bit. Short trip. If you haven't looked at any of the video evidence from the real Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, exactly where it says it is in Acts, do yourself a favor and research that just a little bit. There's a lot of video stuff out there now, and even the Saudi Arabian government is saying, yep, that's where it is. That's the real thing. They're getting ready to build an entire city around it called Neom. You might want to, for those of you who are politically minded, look that up. For those of you who are just active in all kinds of worldwide politics, look it up. Look up Neom, look up the real Mount Sinai, and you'll see what I'm saying. That black top of that mountain is still there today. Completely visible, completely understandable why this was going on. The shofar was blowing, it was noisy, and Scripture says it got loud, and then it got exceedingly loud. However loud is, it exceeded that. The people were scared. But Moses, he guided these folks up to the bottom of this mountain, and he's like, look, here, right here, you just stand here and see what's going to happen. The Almighty begins to speak, and he lays out the first 10, what we call the 10 Commandments, the 10 matters that still matter in some cases, the 10 words. And when he gets done with that, he takes a pause, and the people were starting to back up. They were absolutely terrified. They realized at this moment that they weren't ready. All the preparation that they had done, everything that they'd been getting ready for, they'd been getting ready on the outside. But they had never gotten really ready on the inside. They needed to have cleaned out their heart as well as their tents, as well as the rest of the camp. They really should have been concentrating on something they weren't concentrating on. God speaks to them personally. He comes down and He lays out, you will have no other gods in my face. You're not going to worship idols. You're going to honor your parents. You're going to treat each other like you want to be treated. And with all of that still going on, all of this heaviness coming down on these people, they start to back up. And they're absolutely terrified. Moses, he sees this and he says, don't be afraid. But they said to Moses, look, Moses, you speak to us and we'll listen. But don't let God speak to us, because it will kill us. If God speaks to us again, surely we will die. Moses said, don't be afraid. God has come to test you so that His fear might be in you. He has come down here to get in your face to make sure that you don't sin. Moses is saying, look, the whole reason that he's coming down here and saying this and presenting himself in this way is it so you are absolutely certain that you're going to follow his instructions. The people, they didn't like that. They just kept backing up. No, Moses, you go talk to him. You go talk to him. We'll stand out here. You tell us what to do. We'll listen to you, Moses. But please don't let God speak again. We just can't stand it. We're not ready. Our hearts aren't ready. Our minds aren't ready. So Moses walked up to that dark cloud. And he walked in. And the Almighty said to Moses, you say this to the children of Israel. You yourselves have seen that I have spoken to you from heaven. Don't make gods of silver alongside of me. Don't make gods of gold for yourselves. You are to make an altar of earth for me. You're just going to scrape together whatever you can wrap your hands around. And if you make an altar of rocks for your offerings, don't you dare lay a chisel on those rocks, because if you do, you have profaned it. And I want to stop right here for a second. If you look through the rest of Scripture, you're going to find some very interesting clues. Okay? One of those clues is considered the stones of fire. All right, I'm not going to go into this very detailed and very in-depth, but I need to explain to you why you don't build an altar of hewn stones, why you don't ever lay a chisel on a stone if you're going to put it in the form of any type of an altar or offering for the Almighty. If you look in your Scriptures, you're going to find that the divine being, it's not really an angel, it's a divine being who first rebelled against God and decided that he was better than God. Okay? He was the person who would chisel out the gemstones. That's why they call them stones of fire. And he was very bright, very beautiful, as it says in Scripture. And because of his rebellion, the Almighty has said, you will not lay a chisel to a stone if you're going to put something on it and offer it to me. That's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. You want to build an altar out of stones, you just pile them up, I'll deal with it. Even if they fall down and roll apart, that's okay. I've got this. But don't you dare lay a chisel on a stone and say it's for me, because it's not. That being said, that's as far down as that road as I'm going to go with that. If you're going to make an offering to God, you can if you don't live where there's stones, you can just kind of reach out and scrape some dirt up, put it in a little pile, flatten out the top, put your offering on top, you got yourself an altar, okay? But you don't make gods of silver. You don't make gods of gold. It says so right here. It says so right here. That in every place where I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come and I will bless you if you follow my instructions. That's what it says. That's my paraphrase, but I just summed up Exodus 20 verses basically 22 through 25 in that very short bit, so that hopefully you can understand it. Now, verse 26 is interesting. It says, when you go up an altar, don't make steps. Don't make steps so that your nakedness would not be uncovered while you're on it. Now, a lot of times people say, well, if you go up steps, you can see somebody's robe. That's not what we're talking about. If you build a set of steps, as you go up the steps, doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter, you are now at that point walking according to someone else's desire. Not the Almighty's desire, not your own desire, but whoever carved the steps. Whoever builds the steps. Now, today in the United States, and probably mostly around the world, they are fairly standard. In the United States, they're about an 8-inch tread from the top of one step to the top of the next step. If you put a ruler on, it's about 8 inches. Fairly standard all around the United States. A very long time ago, one of the ways that the people in Europe would keep their castles defendable was you would carve these steps without being even. So you couldn't start running up. You would trip if you did, because all of the steps were actually different heights. So you couldn't get a stride as you go up. And that's kind of what God is saying to us here. He says, look, don't make steps. You're going to put a ramp, and you're going to put a pretty easy ramp. So even if you're young, you can walk up. If you're old, you can walk up, but you walk up at your own pace. You walk up at your own stride. You don't walk up according to someone else's desire. You walk up the way you are able to walk up, the way you are able to approach. He makes it very personal right there, and it gets very personal when you look at this in depth. And I'm not going to go into that much depth. Probably going to leave it right there, because there's a whole lot of things that I want to get to, and I know I'm not going to have time. And this might be 2 or 3 sessions with this, but that's okay. That's okay. The next thing we're going to see when you get to Exodus 21 are the parameters for the covenant. Now, what I mean by that, the blood covenant that is about to be ratified, okay? If we look through, and I'm going to take some time, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through Exodus 21 through 24, 25, and we're going to see what the covenant encompasses and what it doesn't. Okay, we're going to see something that may surprise some people. All right. So as we start going through here, don't be surprised. I suggest you grab a Bible and you read along, because some of these things. Now I'm going to be reading this out of the Tree of Life version. Okay, because right now I've been reading it a little bit. I'm kind of liking it. All right, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of liking it. And I don't have to quite explain as much as I would out of the King James, although I've got a King James sitting right next to me, so that I can also go back and forth and verify some things with it. Okay? In Exodus chapter 21, verse 2, if you buy a Hebrew servant, all right, let's stop for a second right here. Why would the covenant begin with if you buy a Hebrew servant? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. I thought slavery was a bad thing, but right here it starts out if you buy a servant. The first thing that the Almighty starts out with is if you buy a servant. Now let me think about this for a second. Did people get up and go to work for somebody else every day in this culture? No, they didn't. Most people would work for themselves. If they couldn't afford or didn't know how to provide, they had some opportunity. You could, in a sense, go to work for somebody else, but you didn't exactly. What you would do is you would sell yourself into servitude. They would pay you a wage. Okay, so it wasn't exactly slavery, but at the same time, they would treat you exactly, and you're going to see this. They were going to treat you as a member of the family. All right, let's start again with chapter 21, verse 2. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve for 6 years, and in the 7th year he is to go free without payment. If he comes in by himself, he is to go out by himself. If he was married, then his wife will go with him. If his master gave him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children will be her master's, and he will go free by himself. You see what's going on here, right? You see? This is dealing with family. Now, this might sound a little harsh until you understand it. So I've got to slow up and I've got to explain it. So let's read this part again very carefully. If his master gave him a wife, and she bears him sons and daughters, the wife and her children will be her master's. And he, the original slave, the original servant, will go free by himself. Why is this? If the person who sold himself into servitude couldn't make it on his own, but now he has a wife and children, if he couldn't make it on his own before, how is he going to make it on his own now? This is not a bad thing. This is making certain that the master, the person who has enough money to care for these people, continues to care for these people. Okay? This is looking out for the wife and looking out for the children. This is making sure that they have enough food to eat, that they have clothes to wear, that they have what they need in order to live. Not just survive, but to live. This is making certain that people are taking care of other people. This is to absolutely be sure that people are being established. Not to break up families, but to make sure that people are being cared for. Let's read that again with that in mind. If he comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. If he's married, you send his wife with him. See, if there's no children involved, his wife can go. And hopefully together, they will be able to go ahead and put themselves on the path of being well off, so that they can in turn or eventually return this favor. Now, if his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children must remain with their master, and he goes by himself. Again, it's just making absolutely certain that people are taking care of people. Okay? Now, let's go on to verse 5. If the servant plainly states, I love my master, my wife, and my children, and I will not go out free. Okay, this is a position where this person says, you know what? I've got it good here. This guy's taking really good care of me. He's taking good care of my family. He's making sure he provides for us. And all I have to do is trade my freedom, my time, for his money. I'm going to ask this question among American listeners and probably some European listeners today. Do you wake up of a morning and go off to work and trade your time for somebody else's money? Even if you think you're working for yourself, do you trade your time for somebody else's money? Chances are that's exactly how you live. You're trading your time for someone else's money. Here, what this person is doing, it says, if the servant says, I love my master. If the servant says, I like my job, everything's going good, I know I can't do what I'm doing and make it on my own, I'm going to stay right here where things are well. Now, the master now has a responsibility. His master must bring him to God, then take him to a door or a doorpost. This isn't quite way it works. Okay, I'm going to read this and then we're going to go back over it and I'll explain it. Verse 5, and this is coming from Tree of Life again. If the servant plainly states, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. His master is to bring him to a god, then take him to a door or a doorpost. His master is to pierce his ear through with an awl, and he will serve him forever. More to it than that. Okay? If his master takes him, let's say the servant says, look, I really like the way you're treating me and my family. I want to work for you. I want to stay with you. Master, you've been really good to us. I can't do what I do on my own. The master then goes to the gate of the city. In this particular instance, when they're in the tavern or in the wilderness, he's going to take him to the elders. They're going to take him to the doorpost of the tribal doorpost. There will be a formal declaration made. At which point, the master will stand next to the servant who is standing next to a door, and he will then take an awl or a sharp, thin object, put it through his ear, and pin him to that door, signifying that this servant now is pinned literally to the door. Okay? He will then remove it. There will be a gold earring put in this person's ear, signifying that he is a servant. Then the master would also put his signet ring on the servant's finger. And what that is doing is saying, okay, what I say you do, you're going to do. And when you tell someone that I have sent you for something, it's just like me going myself and getting it. All right? So it's just like a father telling his son, go to the store and get me what we need. Now this master can tell this servant, go get what we need, and it will be the master's money, just like it would be the father's money to the son. You treat them exactly like you would treat family. At that point, he has become part of your family. In fact, if you go back and you look at Genesis, where it talks about, I believe it's in chapter 18 or 19, Abraham's servants, the word there is not servant, it is heir, descendant. You treat them exactly like you would treat family. Okay? I think I got time to go on a little bit here. In verse 7, if a man sells his daughter to be a maidservant, she is not to go free as the male servants do. Yeah, a little sexist going on here. No, it's not. There's a lot of things that go into this. I might not have time to explain this whole thing, but we're going to try. If she does not please her master who has selected her for himself, then he is to allow her to be redeemed. He will have no power to sell her to a foreign people, seeing as he dealt deceitfully toward her. If he betroths her to his son, he must give her the rights of a daughter. Okay? If he takes another wife, he is not to diminish her food, her clothing, or her marriage rights. If he does not provide these three for her, she goes free, and she doesn't have to pay for it. All right? Very quickly, if a man has to sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she's not going to go free in 7 years. Okay? That's not going to happen for her. The reason is the father who could not provide for her has sold her to someone else. He has exchanged her spiritual covering. Remember how Adam and Eve, Adam formed out of dirt, okay? Eve formed out of Adam's rib. She gets her spiritual covering through Adam. Now, this person in verse 7, if a man sells his daughter, he has just exchanged her spiritual covering. He has given it to someone else. He no longer, I'm going to say this again, he no longer covers her spiritually. She is now covered by someone else. But there's some things that must be done and must be obeyed, because remember, the Almighty is saying, you've got to take care of each other, and here is the parameters that you do that with. If she doesn't please her master who has selected her for himself, she can be redeemed. In other words, if they just can't get along, something's just not right, the guy can go back to her father and say, look, you got to take her back. She burns the pancakes every morning, and I don't like that. No, it's not that simple. There's more to it. Because you can learn not to burn pancakes, okay? There's a lot more to it. Goes way in depth, and some of it's not covered, and most of it's not covered here. But if for whatever reason they just absolutely can't be together, she can't serve in that household, then the master can go back to the father and say, you've got to take her back. She can be redeemed. But the master, what he cannot do is sell her forward. He can't sell her to somebody else. Now, if he bought her because, if he says, look, Jacob, your daughter is really, really nice. I think she would make a perfect wife for my son, Joseph. Okay? If he betroths her to the son, he must give her the rights of a daughter. So if he says, Jacob, your daughter, I think she'd make a perfect wife for my son, Joseph. What he's saying is, I am willing to accept your daughter to be my daughter if she will marry my son. Okay? If she will marry my son, I will absolutely treat her like a daughter. You won't have anything to worry about. In verse 10, if he takes another wife, wait a minute. If he takes another wife, remember this is part of that blood covenant. If he takes another wife, well, I thought a marriage was between one man and one woman. But if he takes another wife, looks like I got some explaining to do. Looks like I got a lot of explaining to do with this one. Maybe I will let that go, and I will come back and I will visit this again next week, because this is going to take some time. You've got to get your head wrapped around this, because all of this comes with a very heavy, heavy cost if you don't do it properly. And if we don't understand it, we don't know what's going on, we are going to be the ones who mess it up. So, thank you for joining me this time. Please, please, please come back again next time, and I will absolutely try my best to put everything that's here into perspective. Have a very, very blessed week.